Hello, everybody. Welcome to our East Main and West Broad Street stakeholder group meeting. So I'm watching our participants as they enter. It's been a while, but you probably remember me. I'm Marie Keister, and I'm a member of the project team. I'm with Murphy Epson, but I'm part of the AECOM consultant team. Really delighted to have you here today. We're letting a few more people in, and then we will get rolling. All right, so I want to respect your time. So I do want to get started. And it's been about a year since we last got together as a stakeholder group for the East and West Bus Rapid Transit Corridors for LinkUS. So we have a number of updates and are just so excited to have you all here today so that we can get you back up to speed and tell you how you can link up with LinkUS moving forward. So first, our project manager from CODA is going to say a few words of welcome. Zach.
Great, thanks, Marie. Welcome, everybody. And I know it's been quite some time since we got the group together. I think it was June of last year. So thanks for joining today. Really, we want to provide an update on the LinkUS initiative, and then more specifically talk about where we've been with the West Broad Street corridor and the East Main Street corridor, and then talk about really what's upcoming in the next several months. So I think the next slide will go over the agenda.
So we're going to kick off with a funny little exercise, and we, of course, met all during the pandemic, and we were always online. We're still online, but we are getting closer to meeting in person. And so we're having some discussion exercises in a second to start really visualize the corridor from your point of view. So stand by. I'm going to be asking you to write something in the chat box in just a second. We are going to share with you what we've been doing throughout the region to get others up to speed as well. While as we brought you on board, we were very highly focused on the East and West bus rapid transit corridors, but we have a story to tell to the whole region. So we want to tell you how we're getting out there. Then Julia is going to update you on where we are with the East Corridor and the West Corridor and the locally preferred alternatives for both. We are moving into some engineering design milestones that we want to share with you. And then the path to implementation. What are the steps that are going to get us there so that we move from just talking about it to it becoming real? And I want to assure you, everything we've been doing is making this more concrete and more real. And these icebreaker questions and questions I have throughout are really designed to get your input on station design. So more to follow on that as we move on to the next slide. So here's my question for you. So if your community, so when I say your community, what do I mean? If you are representing the Far East Area Commission, for example, I'm thinking of your little area, or if you're from Vets Memorial, your area right in front of Vets, or if you're from Franklinton or Hilltop and so forth, or downtown, your area. If your little community area was an animal, what animal would it be? And if you're stumped and you can't come up with an animal, if your community was a celebrity, who would it be? And if this is so easy for you, you can answer both questions. What I want you to do is enter your name, your area, and then the answers to the questions. So take a couple minutes and think about that question and type it in the chat box. So Jennifer Chamberlain, you're on Far East. You're that's an octopus. So if I can ask you to put your community in, that would be helpful. I do know, Jennifer, where you're from, so I will make note of that. And by the way, we are recording, just so you know. Ooh, the west side is a bear. And Stephen Torcell, you're in the Hilltop area, right? So
Hilltop and Greater West Side, we really serve broad what you would call the Westland area too.
Perfect. And since I have you off of mute, tell me, why is it a bear?
Uh, well, a bear is somewhat solitary. Uh, kind of, you don't want to poke it. If you poke it, it might really eat you, bite you. But you need to make friends with it. That would be how I view our politics on the west side with downtown, maybe.
Beautifully said. I love it. And let me go back to Jennifer. Why are you on the far east side an octopus?
I picked octopus because I feel our area is very spread out. So that's that's all I could think of.
That's good. I love it. Okay, Ronnie, what do you mean for Franklin County white-tailed deer?
Well, this is a little bit of a hard one to pinpoint, but I think that it's an animal that does well in rural areas, but also you can see succeeding a lot in some of our urban areas. And it is the state animal, I believe. So that nods to like the capital of Ohio. And it wouldn't have anything to do with the number of deer crossing signs that we erect on county roads.
Well, as one whose car was just hit by a deer, that resonated with me. Tony Lococo, downtown, why a horse?
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute. A horse because of its power, strength, and resilience.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. What a way to nail that very succinctly.
Thank you.
So if anybody else is trying to digest, we'll move on. But if you can think of an animal or a celebrity that captures the essence of your neighborhood or your community, please write it down. We're really interested in that. So I am going to recap for you who you're going to hear from today. So obviously you're hearing from me. You're going to hear from Kim Sharp, who's Senior Director of Development at CODA. You're going to hear from Julia Suprak with AECOM. She's our Project Manager Extraordinaire. Gavin Poindexter, he's our FTA Whisperer, Federal Transit Administration. Lauren Lynch is going to weigh in, also from AECOM. And Ray, I always say Gita, but I think it's Gaita actually, Ray. So it's going to give you an update on engagement. So to get us rolling, let's go to the next slide. And Zach, if you want to hit our goals for us.
Yeah, so as a reminder, I think we probably went over this a lot in the first phase last year, but as part of LinkUS initiative, we really have 6 themes that we're looking to address. And those are equity, workforce advancement, innovation, economic development, affordability, and sustainability. And then on this slide, really, again, we want to just nail this that, these projects are not something that we have in Central Ohio today. Really looking at building above and beyond CODA's current service offerings. So as you can see the images on the screen, looking at similar peers like Cleveland's Healthline and Indianapolis's Red Line, as well as some other similar BRT routes and high capacity rapid transit services throughout the country. And I know we'll get more into that as we go through this presentation. So turn it back to you, Marie.
Yeah, so today we're really going to be talking about 2 different things. On one hand, we've got the real focus on the east-west corridors, but we want to talk to you about LinkUS overall today. And so if you go to the next slide, we have been reaching out to communities all throughout Franklin County. And last fall, a leadership coalition was established that includes a number of organizations that represent the whole Franklin County area and the CODA jurisdictions and MORPC. In addition to, you always hear us talk about this being a partnership with the City of Columbus, CODA, Franklin County, and MORPC. We have really tried to reach out to those member communities and committees and those organizations that serve region-wide to have them provide input on what the LinkUS program could be. And Kim in a minute is going to go into detail on where those conversations have landed to date. Always more engagement to continue. And we just wanted to give you an overview of who are some of those people we're reaching out to. So certainly these east-west corridors that you are in, we've also been doing a lot of engagement in the northwest corridor from downtown to the Dublin area. And then we've also reached out to event goers. We've been at community events and festivals. We're in the process of reaching out to school systems, civic and community groups, businesses, chambers, associations, you name it. We're trying to reach out to them because our goal is that as many people as possible know what this program is all about. And so I already love it. Tony has weighed in and said, DRAC would like to host you downtown. That's the Downtown Residents Association. Thank you for that invitation. We're looking for as many invitations as we can get. So that's part of your assignment today. If there's an opportunity for us to come speak with your group, we'd love to do it. These are the number of jurisdictions we've been reaching out to. CODA has something like 35 jurisdictions in their service area. And this is a list of those that we have met with at least once, maybe even twice and 3 times so far, just since January. And the feedback we've been getting on behalf of the citizens has just really been impactful and amazing. So overall, we've heard requests for more or improved transit services. I mean, even outside of high capacity rapid transit, more fixed route, more CODA Plus, which is more demand response, dial-a-ride type service. Almost unanimous support for safer walking, biking access to transit. A lot of support for bike trails and sidewalks and greenways. These jurisdictions have been telling us great input on transit-oriented development opportunities in their communities. And, you know, Reynoldsburg and Whitehall come to mind, where they just shared some exciting things that they have ahead of them that they want us to be thinking about as we're doing planning. Bexley, the same. And then we've, of course, heard from City Columbus area commissions as well. And then everybody is offering to help us communicate. So we so appreciate that. And as we create communication toolkit items, we will be sharing that so that you can also share things out on your platforms as well. Those on the high capacity transit routes or bus rapid transit routes are excited. They just want to make sure that we all work closely on the details, and the jurisdictions have been clear. Hey, let us help co-host the public meetings. And so we're working through all of those details. Now, this may seem in the weeds, but if you're a policymaker, this will resonate with you. These jurisdictions have definitely expressed a desire to align their own capital budgets with the LinkUS program and to work together to seek federal funding so that we can make our dollars go as far as possible. So that's been really gratifying. So Kim Sharp has been out there talking to those jurisdictions, and she's going to give you an update on what the LinkUS full program looks like.
Happy to. Thanks, Marie. So the next slide, really, I like how it starts out with a bang, that LinkUS is thinking big, and it is a big project. Essentially, LinkUS is an $8 billion mobility infrastructure investment program where transit is the backbone, but it definitely includes the connective tissue of bikeways, greenways, sidewalks, and some very specific roadway improvements for the transit routes. And so with that, the next one talks about the program and what we think LinkUS can deliver. And I want to emphasize that this is based upon many, many years of planning work. A lot of these projects are in the Insight 2050 corridors concepts. A lot of these projects are in CODA's Next Gen plan, which laid out in 2017 a vision for transit for the region. A lot of these items are in MORPC's Metropolitan Transportation Program plan that all the communities contribute their mobility objectives to. So this is a lot of planning work, but we're gelling it together to talk about what type of package could we deliver that really moves transit into a world-class system that delivers transit in a way that this type of growing community absolutely needs, that's critical for our sustainable long-term growth. So with that, we do feel the LinkUS program can deliver multiple items of the corridors, fixed route service improvements, more first mile, last mile items, capital projects that contribute towards more access to transit, but as well as what we're calling transit supportive infrastructure. And what that is, that's bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and particular roadway improvements along transit corridors that really move this system forward. By 2030, we believe there'll be 3 corridors with the supportive systems. And by 2050, we believe there'll be at least 5 corridors with the supportive systems. So the next slide has line items of dollar amounts. I want to point out the top dollar amount, of course, is these high capacity rapid transit corridors. We are talking true high capacity rapid transit with, all the items that make it work, which take investment. The next highest item is the transit supportive infrastructure. That is a line item that will be shared with the region through MORPC to really put those sidewalks and bikeways and connections in place. And the third highest item is the fixed route improvements. Next slide. The funding is assuming something that's also stated in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which was adopted a couple of years ago. There's an assumption in there that the existing 0.5% CODA sales tax would increase to 1% total. And that would be leveraged to secure additional federal funding. Keeping in mind that any and all state and federal dollars we ask for, we as a region, requires sustainable local match. And we as a transit authority must have that local match to ask for those FTA, the Federal Transit Administration dollars, as well as US DOT dollars, particularly for this, and other federal programs. We have to have that sustainable local match, but that is what we'll leverage to ask for even further dollars. And we are working on this in accord and in coordination with our partners. How we compare with other regional transit authorities, and that's the term used in the Ohio State Legislature, RTAs, regional transit authorities. By law, there's only a certain amount regional transit authorities can ask for from the communities. And Cleveland and Southwestern Ohio sorta are near or at their limit. We are not. We're right about 0.5% currently. And this ask would take us closer to our the other larger transit authorities in the state of Ohio. The funding for the transit supportive infrastructure, that's what this slide is referring to, would be shared with all jurisdiction in CODA's service area. They're all eligible, and we're designing a process with MORPC to be administered by MORPC to allocate these dollars for sidewalks, trails, and transit supportive roadway improvements within their own jurisdictions. And we realize this will be, really who's ready, as well as coordinated geographically with what type of projects we're working on, building out that world-class transit system. The transit system vision, again, this is reiterating what was already on the program, but these are maps that support that. You'll notice there's future high frequency rapid transit corridors connected with an increase in frequent fixed route lines, as well as first mile, last mile connections, et cetera. We're looking at least a 25% increase in service hours. And when we say that, that means longer hours, more frequency, and more lines. The transit supportive infrastructure really focuses on the bikeways, the greenways, and sidewalk improvements, as well as some specific roadways. This map truly illustrates the Central Ohio Greenways Plan, really connecting those bikeways in a way that's been discussed and in the planning works for many years. And the next slide focuses on the sidewalk connections that really get people to the backbone of the transit system. We do not like having a sign, a CODA sign on the side of the road and a muddy ditch. Nobody likes that. And we really need to connect the sidewalks. Something that's extremely important is what is being recommended to the community at large. So the community action plan is, in essence, the LinkUS Executive and Steering Committee's recommendation to the larger Central Ohio community. And those recommendations include all of us championing this transformative infrastructure investment, the dollars I talked about, to provide that sustainable funding for LinkUS for the long term, for the world-class transit system, to advocate for regional prosperity outcomes. That's really what we build along and with these corridors, to create a regional transit-oriented development strategy, again, can a lot of the jobs and housing that's coming and we know is coming, can that be located in a way along and around the transit so that using other modes is just an easy choice to make, and those connections are made in a really thoughtful way. And then the last recommendation is to designate a leadership committee to oversee allocation of the transit supportive infrastructure funding through our partner MORPC. And I believe that's the end. That was a lot, really big picture. Happy to take any questions.
And Kim, as I watch for questions or for hands to be raised, so I am encouraging that. The comment I would like to make is basically 8 billion sounds like a staggering cost between now and 2050. But for some context, and if our MORPC friends are on the phone, if you want to weigh in, as I understand it, that's during that same time, the region is already slated to spend $30 billion on transportation improvements. That's just the accumulation of what all the communities have already asked for transit, and MORPC helps manage the federal funds that go towards some of those investments. ODOT spends $2 billion every year in their construction program. And the I-70, 71, 670 fix, it started at 1.2 billion, and I think now it's at 1.7 billion, and that's before, you know, the recent supply chain issues and inflation. The point is, none of this stuff is cheap. And by making a decision now that this is a priority, it just means you can move the whole region in a more consistent direction. So does any of my teammates want to weigh in on that? Nope, they just want to leave it right there. Okay, I'm not seeing any chats or questions, so why don't I turn it on over to my next question? All right, so chat exercise again. Again, write your name, or you could just say what your neighborhood is. What is your community known for? Or along the same lines, does your community have any unique icons or figures? So Reynoldsburg, I think you have the Tomato Fest. You know, is there something on the west side that you guys do that's unique? Hilltop, what is it? The bean dinner. I always think of the Hilltop bean dinner. But what are those things that are unique to your community? So please write those down. So you're all thinking, here we go. Tony, yep, downtown, employment center, state capitol. All right, as you all sit there and try to be creative, come back to this question, write it down so you don't forget it. So if something spurs your thinking in 10 minutes, you remember to write it down and let us know. Okay. Oh, thank you. Westerville, Uptown, Untapped, and Farmers Market. Sweet. Makes me crave a brew. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And I am going to turn it over to Julia.
All right, thank you, Marie. So I just want to refresh our memories about all the work that we've done to get us to this point. So want to talk about the LPAs, or locally preferred alternatives, that were approved by the CODA board back at the end of the summer last year. So before we go any further, let's talk about what the term locally preferred alternative means. That is a term that the Federal Transit Administration uses. It's a fancy, wonky term that basically just means project that we're advancing to request funding for. So the main components of the locally preferred alternative, or LPA, are the mode, so what the vehicle is. We've decided on bus rapid transit. The station locations, which we identified during the planning phase and continue to refine currently. the alignment or the route, so the route along which the BRT would operate, and then guideway design. And that's really the heart of what we're working on right now in this phase, this 30% design phase. So what that means is, what type of roadway is the BRT going to be operating in? Is it in a dedicated lane, meaning it's bus only, or is it in mixed traffic, meaning that it sort of operates like buses do today, kind of mixed in with general traffic? So those are the big ticket items that sort of comprise an LPA. So at the end of the summer last year, we finished our kind of year-long planning phase where we looked at the east-west corridor holistically, and based on a number of the key metrics that we generated through our analysis, based on conversations with stakeholders, we determined that the east-west corridor isn't just one project, it's actually 3 separate projects. So by breaking the corridor into 3 projects, we're really matching the travel demand or where people want to go. And it really optimizes our flexibility to attract federal funding and to attract the most federal funding that we can. So coming out of that process, if we just go back to the previous slide for a second, there were 3 different projects. So starting on the west, the green line is West Broad, stretching from Prairie Township into downtown Columbus. And then sort of on the northeast side, we have the East Broad alignment in blue, and then the East Main alignment in the pink. So all of those start on the east or west and then go into the downtown. And you'll see there's some overlapping service in the downtown. And that's because the downtown is a very transit-rich environment. There's a lot of riders that are coming to and from the downtown, and there's that density of development that supports transit ridership. You'll also see it in that sort of dotted gray line there, the Northwest Corridor. So that is a corridor that's being led by the city with CODA support. And so it's a separate process, but we are very connected with them and making sure that we're making decisions, particularly in the downtown, excuse me, in a way that's strategic and thoughtful between all of the projects. So these are the 3 LPAs we identified. Then we determined that there were just 2 of the 3 that we were going to advance for federal funding. So the East Broad project was sort of put back in the hopper of high capacity rapid transit projects that are going to be funded through that multi-billion-dollar package that Kim outlined. So we didn't throw it out the window, we just put it back in that larger pool of projects. And we're currently advancing these 2 to request federal funding at the end of this summer. So what you can see here is a little bit more definition around what those guideway types would be, again, how the BRT vehicles would operate in the roadway. So if we look at the West Broad Street corridor, it is primarily operating or will be operating in mixed traffic from the Rockbrook development in Prairie Township, mixed traffic down just east of Phillips Georgesville Road. That'll transition to that dedicated median operation. So that means there'll be dedicated BRT lanes in the center of the roadway. There'll be general traffic on either side of it. As it continues eastward into downtown, sort of serving the Columbus State campus in the downtown area. If we look over at the East Main Street corridor, it's going to be starting on the east out in Reynoldsburg, traveling westward again in those dedicated median lanes until we get in the vicinity of Bexley, where we're going to transition to mixed traffic, go through Bexley and then transition back into those dedicated median lanes. So you can see in the inset map here what downtown Columbus, what we're looking at there. So we're coming in on Rich and Main Street and then turning up High Street and terminating at the existing CODA Spring Street terminal. So I'll talk a little bit more a little later about how we defined that alignment and sort of the process going forward in terms of all of the other concurrent planning work that's going on. So here we have the actual station locations laid out. So again, there will be 1 park and ride on the western end at the Galloway Road station, traveling eastward through downtown ending approximately at Washington Avenue. If we look at the East Main, a little more detail around where those station locations are. And I think if we go to the next slide, oh, there we go. Nope, sorry. That inset map again, showing the downtown. So as part of the planning phase, what we had done was identify High Street as the locally preferred alternative. What we heard as we started this phase of work, the 30% design phase, there was interest in considering both the 3rd and 4th Street couplet, the one-way pair, as an option for going north through downtown, or looking at a bi-directional lane on just 3rd Street. So we held a workshop with a number of agency stakeholders back in November, and worked through kind of the development implications, the transportation network implications of those 3 alternatives, and determined that what we are suggesting now is to proceed with High Street as the locally preferred alternative. That's what we've shared with the FTA. But there is so much concurrent work that's going on in the downtown. So there's a downtown strategic plan, there's a broader LinkUS initiative. There's just so much happening that we're going to continue to work through that discussion of High versus 3rd Street going forward. But for now, we are advancing design on that High Street alternative. So I think that brings me to the end of my slides, so I'll pass it back to Marie.
So, Julia, thank you. Abby Everson would like to know, what's the last station location on the west end?
So we have that listed as Galloway Road. It's actually going to be, there's an open parcel right now that is, it looks like Zach wants to answer this. Zach, you want to?
Sure, yeah. So, since we wrapped up our locally preferred alternative back in August of last year, the end of the line was Westwoods Boulevard because Coda has a park and ride right behind the Wendy's there. But we received a lot of public input and stakeholder input about looking at that again. There's a Kroger at Galloway Road, and there's a lot of new development happening out just about half a mile past Westwoods. So we did analyze that. So that is an update since we had our locally preferred alternative. So right now we're working with Prairie Township. There's a parcel of land across from their community center, across the street from Kroger, that we're looking to have more of an end-of-line facility for that. So we added a station since we last met. So it says Galloway Road, but really I think it's specifically Rockbrook Crossing, right at the Prairie Township Community Center.
Great, that's what I was hoping you were going to say. Thank you.
And Jennifer Chamberlain has a question, but while we're on the west side, we have National Church Residences on the phone. And if I could call on you, you have a lot of stuff going on the west side, new development. So are these stations pretty close to where your new locations are? Do you know?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah Jane.
Great. Yeah, sorry about that. I had some computer issues, so I've joined by phone. So I imagine my face is very close to the screen, and I'm sorry about that. But we're so excited. I'm thrilled to see this, the Prairie Township stop. We are hoping to start construction on a new facility right at the corner of Galloway Road and West Broad Street. So thrilled to be able to be on this line here on the west end. And then we have another community on almost like West Broad and High Street. And so we're also building right now. So I'm thrilled about those two in particular. We have a number of existing communities right on this West Broad corridor. So I think this will be hugely helpful to access for our seniors on the west side. And then of course we have a number of communities on the east side as well on East Main Street. So both of these corridors from National Church Residences perspective is going to be hugely impactful. We're very thrilled.
That's fabulous. Thank you for adding that detail. And just for everybody's benefit, you are a national provider of senior affordable housing. And we saw in the newspaper some of these announcements, and we shared them with our technical team. And of course, Coda was on top of all that too. And just, we're really excited those things were coming to fruition at kind of the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think from, you know, I think I'm preaching to the choir here when we talk about how important connectivity is for our residents. We do specifically work with seniors, but I think we could say that for really anybody. But for our senior residents in particular, I think having options like this is just going to continue to create independence and self-sustaining factors for years and years to come. You know, our residents are somewhere between, they're able to join us at 55. That doesn't really feel like a senior to me, but that is the qualification. Most of our residents are 70 to 75 years old, and many of them are starting to move with us because they cannot be as independent as they once were when they owned a home. So having an affordable option with an opportunity to be in community, this just expands their community even further to be able to be a part of the larger community that I'm sure many of our residents have called home for their entire lives.
That's just wonderful insight. And I think that just brings us back to who we're doing this for and what's this all about. So Jennifer, you had a question. What determines whether it is mixed traffic or a dedicated lane? And you're wondering why Bexley shows mixed traffic.
Sure, I can go ahead and start, and if Kim or Zach want to jump in. So as Kim referenced earlier, our intention through this process and this project is to make a really high quality investment in transit, in premium transit. And so what we started with was the assumption that it was going to be fully dedicated lanes. Now, that's not feasible or practical in some areas, or the cost of putting in dedicated lanes doesn't accrue a lot of benefit because, for instance, out on the western end of West Broad, existing and forecast traffic lets us know that the buses can operate as well in mixed traffic as they would in a dedicated lane. So it's a little bit of a balancing act of balancing cost and travel times and ridership. In Bexley specifically, we've been working with that community to understand what their preferences are. We've been holding technical and stakeholder group meetings throughout this entire process, having one-on-one meetings with municipalities, different community groups to really understand how this could fit within their communities. So with the feedback we got from Bexley and just the existing kind of roadway geometry out there, mixed traffic was their preferred design. So Kim or Zach, anything else?
I think I would just note that at the federal level, they view it as true BRT if it's over 50% dedicated lanes. And right now we're looking at about 70% and 70% and 85% essentially. So we're at a really good place at the federal level. And as we negotiate with the communities, and if there's additional feedback and there's a little more mixed traffic, the thing is we're going for fast. When we say high capacity rapid transit, it needs to be fast for people to really view it as a choice. And we have to balance that with some communities trying to navigate, well, our on-street parking, and we get it, we get it. So there's a balancing act we're going after here. What the federal government expects in the way of how much dedicated versus shared, what the local community truly needs to kind of manage their own expectations and their own business community, as well as a learning curve for all of us on how, walkable, transit-oriented design and really picks up is part of an economic development tool. I think that's part of us all understanding that together in a better sense. So we're at a really good place right now. And even as we continue to negotiate, I believe we'll still remain in a good place.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, we are talking with the city of Bexley about securing some of that lanes, at least during peak hours for for the transit. So while it might not be the entire, stretch of what the bus rapid transit would operate, at least securing it during those rush hour times could be a huge benefit for people getting around during those times. So to be determined, we're just ongoing conversations with the City of Bexley staff.
Thanks, guys. Stephen Torcell, what is your question?
I wonder if the difference in the far west side with Prairie Township and Bexley is related to the fact that there are medians separating the lanes. Does that have something to do with the recommendations as being mixed traffic? I'm trying to understand.
So out on the western end, and I think we have Bill on the phone, who's our design lead. I'm quickly scrolling through our list here. So he's welcome to jump in. But so out on the western end, it really is the fact that it is a quite wide roadway. The travel speeds are pretty high, and there's comparatively limited congestion because of the development pattern out there. So the cost associated with doing a dedicated lane isn't balanced by improvements in BRT if we put it in a dedicated lane. So what makes BRT fast is putting it in a dedicated lane, and ironically, the places where it's most difficult to do that is the places where it's most impactful to do that. So in your areas of more congestion, getting in that dedicated lane accrues the biggest benefits for riders of the BRT, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, and then Bexley's a little bit different. It is a narrow right of way through there. It's very built up. Sort of has that a smaller kind of like small downtown feel, and their preference to go mixed traffic is really just a reflection of how they want this to work within their community. And like Zach said, we're continuing the conversation with them to see, do they want to do fully mixed traffic? Do we want to do some peak hour lanes, which work sometimes in other communities? So there's options on the table there.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer, do you want to unmute yourself and talk a little bit more about this issue on, let's see, East Main?
Sure. Like I said, we were fortunate to have Zach out at our commission meeting last Tuesday, and we actually had a large group of people at our meeting, which was wonderful because they were able to ask some questions that I hadn't thought of, and that was, if you are having the bus rapid transit and it's in a dedicated lane, the assumption that I had made was that you're going to be widening what's there to allow for one more lane, because on major portions of the road, there's only 2 lanes in each direction. So if you use one of those lanes for dedicated for the bus rapid transit, then that only leaves 1 lane for all the additional traffic to be going down the road. And
So
that was a problem.
Jennifer, well, I'm going to call on Kim here and Zach to weigh in on this. And, just a note too, that at the same time, this project is going in on Broad Street, on East Broad, there is a widening going in, a lane widening. So, they're each going to serve a little bit different markets. But Kim and Zach,
Sure.
do you want to weigh on
Yeah, I'm
this?
happy to. I'm going to just use the data I have, Jennifer, to kind of talk about what's expected. But we know currently in the Columbus region, about 3% of commuters, and that's pre-pandemic commuters, utilize transit. Now, in a lot of other cities, that number is more like 5 to 10%. And in the geeky planning terms, that's called mode shift, meaning people are shifting out of their cars into other ways to get around, whether that's walking, biking, etc. What we've seen since the pandemic is a couple of really big changes. Number one, there's been a huge mode shift to walking and biking because, simply put, a lot of people are not driving to the office like they were before. Some are, but not all. So there's been a mode shift all on its own because of the pandemic and the way people are choosing to get around. And the way we're working with the local communities is how we're building around these corridors and how we're connecting a lot of the other corridors. If around the station locations and along the corridors, there's more housing and more jobs, which is one of the major goals of LinkUS, it makes transit an easier choice for people to make. Therefore, other communities have shown when they do this, the development along with the mobility investments, you see a definite mode shift, meaning less people driving, more people walking and biking and taking transit. Now, we're in the Midwest. We're not going to see a huge, shift overnight. I think we all know that. But if we do see a shift, along with understanding that change in today's traffic patterns, which are very different than before the pandemic, what we're going to see in the car counts are very different. They're a lot lower. I think we know that. We're trying to analyze and rethink our what we call trip origin and destination mapping, understanding where people are coming from and going to. That's changed tremendously. So boiling it back down to this one lane of transit, one lane of traffic in each ways, we do believe it will maintain the traffic of the people driving the cars and the buses chugging along as people choose, because the traffic numbers are different. They're a lot different. As people choose other modes and a lot more people are working from home. But I think looking at those numbers more carefully and how we describe them and talk about that with the community at large will be helpful. And I'm glad you brought it up because that's a good talking point.
We actually, I would have changed my whole opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people would have changed their opinion on whether we would have picked East Main or East Broad if we had known this going into it. Because with Broad Street widening, it now knowing that there is going to be a dedicated lane and just one other mode or one other lane for all other traffic, I definitely would have picked East Broad.
It's a transition, Jennifer. I mean, I understand it's kind of hard to wrap your head around all of these things. And I think maybe showing some experiences in other cities, how they made it through this transition and they had, as very similar anxieties. Where does all this car traffic go? How do we handle it? And this is a whole paradigm shift in how we think about moving people. So I think that's something for us to do a better job of showing kind of how that transition takes place and what the experiences are in other cities. So I just want to see maybe if anyone else from the, if Julia wants to weigh in on this, or if we should go on to our next section.
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing I would say is that this is really a once in a generation opportunity to rebalance how the roadway is used, right? Like we tend to think of roads as just being for cars, but it's really about moving people rather than moving cars. So, working with the community to understand the most efficient way to do that for all of our community residents, including those who don't have cars, is important. So
great. Okay, so let's go on to our next. I think I have another question. How would a station in your community amplify what you would aspire to be? So sometimes when the communities put in stations, maybe they are interested in some sort of artwork that recognizes the history of their community, or maybe it's some iconic person. Tony, you reminded me downtown, the State House. I'm not suggesting this is the way you go, but President Lincoln stopping, or a couple of times, once after death, at the state capitol, is a really amplifying figure for the State House. Is there somebody else like that, or is there some other type of history that your community might want to embrace that amplifies kind of those things you think about when you think about your community or what you stand for and so forth? I can't remember exactly where the stop is in the Franklinton area, but had it been right in front of Vets Memorial, you obviously your head goes to a soldier, right? And honoring our veterans. Is there something like that in your community that you would like to be considered. So again, put down your community and put down your idea. While you think about that a little bit, I am going to move on to Gavin. Or this
Thank you
might
very
actually
much.
be Julia first. Is it Gavin here? It is Gavin.
Yep. Thank you very much, Marie. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's kind of the next path towards implementation of these two projects. The next step in our process is going to be to request that FTA evaluate and rate the projects based on the small starts criteria, which is the funding program that we're going to be seeking for a large portion of the funding to build and implement these projects. And so as we're trying to do that, we need to prepare that information and submit it to FTA in late August or early September. That's a national deadline that FTA sort of wants all of the information, and that works into the federal budgetary process. So that is an immovable deadline whenever FTA lets us know, in when that deadline will be. We expect that they're going to be telling us either in late May or June as to when that deadline will be, and then we will be working towards that deadline, but we've kind of got that planned out and have been working towards that. One of the things that we're going to be doing and submitting as part of that evaluations and rating package is we're developing the plans currently to about a 15% level of design. Those are going to be submitted to CODA for review and then to be shared with the communities as part of that process in May. The West Broad, I believe, has already been provided to the technical staff, and then the East Main plans will be coming closer towards the end of the month. So we're going to be doing those reviews and kind of coming up with where each of those projects are, so that people have a chance to weigh in on the concepts and the designs and where different elements of the project are still when we have time to move them as we're moving on the design. And design, as people might know, is an iterative process where we provide a design, we get comments, we tweak those designs, and we try to work out exactly how it is so that we can make sure the project that we're designing fits into the community and meets the needs of the community in order to help improve the mobility of corridor residents. We're also going to be working to clear each of those corridors environmentally. We can go to the next slide. So this is, again, multiple steps in this process, milestones that we're going to be working on. Right now, we're working with the municipalities, ODOT, to develop a system for traffic analyses and station plans. And we're going to be looking at how will traffic move through these corridors as we are changing, as we're potentially removing a general purpose travel lane, or not removing, but transitioning it to a bus only lane, and where exactly is going to happen. If we're constructing a median where there's currently a median and we're limiting left turn movements in certain places, how are those going to happen? How are people still going to move and travel through the corridor? Those are all going to be things that we're going to be working on as we're going through that. And those are wrapped up both in the 15% design plans as well as those traffic analyses that I talked about. One of the important things that we're going to be doing with that package to FTA at the end of the summer, I'm going to be including the costs for the project, because one of the things we're doing is we're really putting in a marker, if you will, into the federal budget request for fiscal year 2024. So that's kind of the purpose of that, is so that we can get money reserved for these two projects in 2024. And we're going to be continually advancing the design, because what we want to do is, by the time the designs are done, have the federal funding there in order to allow us to move straight into construction once we get those designs ready. And we're going to continue to have public and stakeholder engagement and move forward with those. So we're going to continue to be doing, as I mentioned before, that ongoing work. We've got those 15% design plans that are currently being reviewed, or we'll start that review process sooner. We're going to be taking a closer look at on-street parking options in different portions of the corridor as we're tweaking that roadway. As Julia had mentioned, we're looking about how can we better utilize the right-of-way to better meet the current needs of the corridor. That's going to be looking at all modes and all uses of that right-of-way. We're doing station planning and station area planning and design. So looking at the station itself, what's on it, what's it going to look like, as well as the or the development potential of the area around the station, or transit-oriented development. How are those things going to go? How is it going to be a catalyst to make the community a better place? For that, I think we'll, okay. The other thing we have to be doing throughout this process is making sure that we're clearing everything through what is known as the National Environmental Policy Act, or more commonly known as NEPA. Right now, we are coordinating with the Federal Transit Administration to determine which path through the NEPA process is most appropriate for each of these corridors. It's likely either going to be a categorical exclusion or an environmental assessment. These are the two lower levels of environmental clearance, and we're sort of on that threshold as to where we want to be going. As we're looking through it, a lot of what we're going to have as schedule critical things is going to be what is known as the Section 106 process. And that's really looking at the cultural and historical resources and making sure that we're appropriately documenting or not having adverse impacts on those resources. So that could be a historic building, an archaeological site, just looking at the community. How has it changed over time? Making sure that we're being respectful to the history of Columbus and of the communities and neighborhoods that are around these corridors as we're implementing new technology and new modes of transportation within those corridors. Part of the things with this is there's a lot of review by different government entities, and the amount of times that those things take are just set in, and we can't move those around very much. So those tend to be on all these projects the longest lead time items. So we're going to be working on that as soon as we can with FTA and SHPO here in Ohio. Were there any questions on kind of the upcoming next steps over the next few months?
So Gavin, you said SHPO. Can you spell that
State
out?
Historic Preservation Office. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Right.
Sometimes I get acronym heavy. I apologize. But yeah, they're the office within the state of Ohio who is responsible to make sure that historical resources are appropriately taken into account while government projects are being implemented throughout the state. So it's their job to protect historic and archaeological resources within the state of Ohio.
Thanks, Gavin. And I know that sounds like a bunch of bureaucratic gobbledygook. No, Gavin, it was really exciting, let me assure you. But
no, I'm used to it.
But my point is, it's important stuff, and it's there for the protection of the environment and of our communities. And we all take it extremely seriously, but there's real methodology we have to follow. And so Gavin is just illustrating all these pieces and parts that have to be navigated while you're looking into putting in a big program like this. So does anybody have any questions on that? I'm not seeing any hands. So let's go on to hearing from Ray.
Thanks, Marie. Hi guys, again, I'm Ray Guida, and I am managing the public engagement side for the East Main and West Broad. So give a quick update. So one of the communities that we really reached out to in the beginning of this piece of engagement was the biking community. They have been extremely engaged with us so far. So really excited to give you some information about what we've learned. Some safety concerns, obviously, the speeding of cars alongside the roads was one of the main concerns that the biking community had, and we were able to address some of those. We also reviewed with them some potential types of bike lanes, and they were able to look at different options from other cities, and we were able to kind of get their feedback on what options felt really good to them. We also were able to discuss wayfinding options, talk about theft prevention, upkeep of the infrastructure of those stations, and then also pros and cons to bike lane additions on those primary and then secondary roads as well. So it was a really great conversation. You can actually, if you do want to watch it, it is on the LinkUS YouTube channel. And so go to the next slide. So we do have a lot of events coming up in May and all the way through August. We will be in each of your communities. You'll see us either at events or at public meetings and things like that. So you'll see more emails and communications from us on how to engage both as a stakeholder and also in getting your community involved as well. What I wanted to mention as well is if you live in Reynoldsburg, we have actually set a date for your design station session. It's a community inspired design session, and that's May 21st from 2 to 4:30. And that's at the Reynoldsburg Library. And then if you're in the Bexley community, we have it set for May 27th from 12 to 2 p.m. and that's at the Bexley Library. You'll see more of those sessions being planned out. And again, you'll have more communications down the pipe.
Hey, Ray,
Yeah.
do I understand, aren't there a couple of bike rides coming up?
Bike sessions are going to be June and July. I think that's where they're getting scheduled. We don't have official dates yet, but you guys will see those coming out as well this month.
And how do they find out about those? Is it just by going to the website? Is it by making sure they're signed up for the e-newsletter?
Make sure you're signed up for the e-newsletter. Yep, those emails will get sent out to the email newsletter. Yep.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, and as Marie has been asking as well, if you'd like us to come to speak to your community or your group, please reach out to us. I'm going to put my email in the chat. So if there's some group that you have or community that you'd like us to come speak to, that would be absolutely lovely. And we'd also really like you to consider writing a letter of support for this project as well. And Marie can maybe speak a little bit to that as well. And then also noting that we do have summer public meetings already going out as well. So you'll see those again in that email newsletter if you're signed up. Marie, did you want to talk a little bit about the writing a letter of support piece?
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate that. Yes, we are, when you go to the FTA, it's always extremely helpful if you can include letters of support. And so we are drafting a template for either a letter of support or a resolution of support. It has to go through some internal review. And if you're interested in that, let us know. We obviously would ask you to personalize it, make it more customized to your community, but we're preparing some things that, hit kind of the language that FTA looks for. And this is also something that the CODA board would like to see to understand the region's support for the overall LinkUS program. So we won't be ready to share that for another week or two, but we're getting close. And then we'd be delighted to give you something to work from so you don't have to start with a blank page.
Thank you so much. Next slide. So I will hand it back over to Marie to talk a little bit more about timeline or send off to whoever is talking about timeline.
Lauren.
Yes,
Lauren?
I'd be happy to talk about timeline.
Tell a little bit more about yourself, because this is the first time I think they're hearing from you directly.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Lauren Lynch. I have recently been upgraded to Deputy Project Manager, and so I have been involved in the process kind of behind the scenes all along, taking notes, doing the technical work. And so I'm really excited to be here and to be speaking with you, even though I might have been behind the scenes all along. So I'm glad to, again, be here with you and share a little bit more about where we're going and where we've been. So as you see here, this is sort of that high level FTA guided schedule that we're working towards. As you've heard today, there's been a lot of planning work that's been completed in the last year during COVID, and many meetings that many of you have attended. And so we greatly appreciate that support. And we've been very busy advancing the engineering and design work. Currently just released the 15% design plans for technical review, and that was specific to the West Broad corridor. And so we're working towards East Main 15% design plans as well. And so as you see here, we're really working towards that goal of achieving project funding through the FTA, as Gavin had mentioned. And then once securing that, moving into construction. And our ultimate goal is to begin revenue service for both corridors by 2027. So a lot of exciting work. And obviously, as Ray had alluded to, great public engagement as well. And so it's been a great process so far, and we're excited to continue to advance the design. And as you see here, sort of the more micro level timeline as it relates to this year, that 15% design milestone, and then really working up towards that FTA evaluation and rating materials package that Gavin alluded to in order to secure funding for both of these corridors. And so a busy summer ahead. And then by the end of the year, we're going to be moving into that 30% engineering design, and again, through the NEPA, the environmental work. And so we'll be moving forward again next year, continuing to refine the designs and then incorporating your feedback. So again, let me know if you have any questions about timeline. Happy to jump into some specifics, but we're really excited to continue to advance this work and bring this to Columbus. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Lauren. So we have thrown a lot at you. So I want to ask another question. So we hadn't gotten together for a year because we had to do some things on the technical side to get some analysis done and figuring out different traffic counts and how to get to Jennifer's point, making sure the traffic still flows while you also put in a dedicated lane and working with the communities and so forth. But how would you like to stay involved? If we hold another meeting, say, this fall, and got you back up to speed, that's one thing we could do. So I'd be interested to know if you like that approach. And we also would really like to encourage you to get your communities involved. And so we'd like your help promoting these opportunities. So as we met with jurisdictions, they said to us, if you will send us the links or the social media assets or those sorts of things, we can help push them out on our platforms. And we would just ask if you would do that for us as well. And so Ray, as these sessions become available, we always want to make sure that we're giving this group here the communication tools they need to push it out there. But what else can we do to encourage your residents to sign up for, or your constituencies to sign up for the newsletter or to follow us on social media? That's where people get information about this and those opportunities for engagement. So what thoughts do you guys have on your involvement and your community's involvement? Do you have any suggestions? Okay, now's when I start picking on people. So Stephen, you have Hilltop on the Homes, right? Is your organization?
Those are the Homes on the Hill. That's correct.
Oh, it was so close.
That's so close. Yes.
So close. So, is there a forum there, or how do we work with you on something like that?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're in the midst right now of working on the city's plan for the greater Hilltop area called Envision Hilltop. And there are 3 committees that are part of that. And I think, when I participate in these meetings, I can bring information back to them, but perhaps they might like, and I'll talk to the city liaison, to directly interact with maybe one of your staff people about this too. I didn't see anybody I recognized on this call from that particular group, but that might be a good way to kind of engage the community sort of through that committee. And I'd be glad to help you connect with them anyway, if that's what you're looking for.
That sounds like a wonderful opportunity. So yes, if you want to, and actually Ray has put in an email address there. If you want to email Ray who that contact person is. And I do know we have.
I think the contact person probably is best me for the time being. And then I can connect you. I connect you with the city person. I think that's what you're asking. So a person from the Department of Neighborhoods who's kind of coordinating the overall plan. And I think it's just helpful for them to have access to this information. So
that would be great.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, they may be on one of our committees already, but if you wouldn't mind, that'd be fabulous.
Sure.
And let's see, we've got some representatives from the hospital systems here. Do you have any suggestions on what we should be doing there? I mean, in your case, you've got patients coming and going from all over the place, but is this something we might be able to brief your faculty on? Let's see, I'm looking at, I think,
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
is, sorry, this is Abby Everson. I'm with Ohio Health, so representing Doctors Hospital. We do have several staff that rely on public transportation. So I think I can take it back to the leadership team. We've got a couple of different forums that we can utilize to communicate and get feedback from.
that would be fabulous. Thank you, Abby. And then just let Ray know, you see the email there, or you have my email from the meeting invitation. You can always email me too, and I'll make sure Ray's brought in the loop. And when we say this, by the way, we'll bring technical team representatives too.
Sorry about that. It's Jason Coma from Mount Carmel also on. I think, I guess starting with the, the West Broad route, taking some of this information and allowing me to re-educate our team. We do have a sizable presence on our Franklinton campus. Part of that, I'd recommend, we have the ability to play the role of co-convener, including, a location to hold any other briefings in conjunction with individuals, whether that's the Board of Trade or others. And I sit on, several of board of directors there. And so let me think about other ways to connect further, I guess, on the patient access side. And then, out east, obviously, the shift a little bit to the East Main as opposed to Broad Street, makes me think a little bit differently. I'm not sure we would be able to play as direct a role, out east, obviously, with the shift there, but certainly as part of the broader community on the West Broad side, we'd be happy to play the role of convener as needed.
Thank you so much. We just so appreciate that. The goal is to make sure everybody knows what this is, and this is really helpful. Then our area commission representatives, I know that we'll be doubling back with you to make sure that you've had a briefing lately. Jennifer, of course, you just got a briefing, and you are probably going to want to have Zach come back. We heard that. Mark Conti, I know will be coming to your group in early June. Let's see, Paul, your capital, right? What can we do with you guys?
Well, we have 3 or 4 different websites we can all, obviously, one is Capital U that comes out every 2 weeks. That would be one link. The other one is our sustainability link that we get out to our students and our staff and faculty. It's a website that we have there. And especially since we have the bike program, the Go Bike program now, that's on that website. So that could easily put in the LinkUS aspects on that too. So we're constantly updating that, all the time. So those are 2. And then the third one, of course, is just the Chimes, which is our student newspaper, okay, which comes out on a every 2-week basis too. So that's the way we can get the word. And yes, we work hand in hand with Bexley, obviously, since we're their biggest, employer for that matter. And but those are 3 things I was thinking about that would really integrate our community, because we're talking about almost 1,000 employees that we have, on the campus, and the majority of them I know take a lot of the facilities folks take rapid transit or buses to get here, clear from the west side or clear from the east side or clear out, in other areas too, having to make connections. So I think that's probably 3 ways, so I just need to know who I'd contact, and then we would give you the links so that you can constantly update if you want our community and educate us even more.
That'd be fabulous. And Paul, you triggered a couple of brainstorms that we'll follow up with you on. And Ray's email is in here, but Ray, we also have everybody's contacts, obviously, for the stakeholder group. So
yeah,
you'd put it on your list to follow up with Paul directly too. That'd be great.
Yep,
thanks,
I'll
Ray.
be sending an email out. Thanks, guys.
And Jason and Abby, Sarah Jane, I know how to follow up with you guys. I have an idea for something you guys could do. And that is,
Let's do it.
and that is, I know you guys have quite sophisticated video capabilities. And so you did a beautiful job of saying why this was important for your seniors and your faculty. So we might ask you to maybe work with your team to tell that story on video and adding in some pictures of your customers, if you might be open to that.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, who did I miss? Mark, we already promised Tony we were going to come talk to his group. Ronnie, how's Franklin County? You guys are, I know we're meeting with you guys regularly, or at least you're on a lot of these meetings. Is there anything else we should be doing, Ronnie?
In terms of other things that we should be doing, it seems like you're doing a very good job reaching out to some of the area commissions. I've had luck doing that with some of our projects, but I really think that that's something that you're already doing. So I don't have any particular extra people that you could reach out to on the top of my head.
Yeah, and tell your county engineer that we'll get him stuff so when he's tweeting and posting, he can talk about LinkUS too.
That we could probably make happen. Let me know if you'd like me to put you in contact with our communications department.
Yes, please do that.
Yeah, okay.
Let's count on that. Any other questions do you all have today about any of the technical stuff or any comments on what you learned today? Was this helpful?
I think this is greatly helpful. Thank you so much for the update.
Thank you. And if somebody feels one way but doesn't want to speak up verbally, feel free to put it in the chat. But otherwise, Zach, is there anything you would like to add or?
No, but yeah, thanks everybody for spending your an hour or so this afternoon. I think that we'll probably reconvene sooner than we did last time. I know it's been 11 months, so obviously now that we're quickly into the design work, that we're gonna try to get this group together on a little bit more frequent basis. But I think setting up these off more focused meetings and communication efforts is really the purpose of the stakeholder group. So again, if there's any additional ideas, you have our contact information. And then I think we'll probably be putting this video on YouTube as well. So again, if you have those that haven't heard of the LinkUS initiative or need a lot more information, the LinkUS website has all of that. And then also the YouTube page has a lot of these previous meetings recorded on there as well.
Thanks, Zach. And I see that Stephen's got another question.
Now, this is just a general question, but I'm curious how the arrival of Intel is going to affect the plant, because I was trying to check out the east side plan and just thinking, well, you guys probably have to go back to square one, don't you? Maybe.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of conversations happening about that, and I'm not gonna say it was a surprise, but it all came at once, right? So the specific site is outside of CODA's service area, but we're working with our surrounding counties, including Licking County, looking at those connections. Right now there's not many connections between transit with the other counties, but as we grow and as part of LinkUS initiative, having more resources, looking at new lines, new services as we're growing as a region is definitely of importance. It has been a discussion, at least on the East Main side, of where that end of the line is in the city of Reynoldsburg, and thinking about long-term that connection to Intel, and then perhaps down south to the Rickenbacker Airport. So I guess to be determined, but I know there's a lot of conversations that are happening about that.
Thanks, Zach.
The other reaction I know we had was, you've heard a million times that MORPC and Insight 2050 predicted another million, or getting us to a region of 3 million by 2050. I think the Intel announcement just made that number much more urgent and maybe coming sooner than we thought. And just more reason why we need to be implementing policies now so that we're handling our growth in a smart way and finding ways to move more people and not just more cars so we can be more sustainable in our growth.
Thanks.
Well, if it's 3:20, in theory, I could keep you till 3:30, but if you don't have any more questions or anything more to discuss, we will let you go. I'll give you another 10 seconds to raise your hand or jump in with a question or comment. Counting down. And you're all just eager to get outside. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much for your time and your interest. Have a great day.